Hello everyone and welcome. This is Chloe with Cousin DIY. Today I'm going to show you how I made this autumn themed tassel pendant gemstone and glass bead necklace. I'm going to get set up and I'll be right back. For starters, I have cut a 2-foot length of 24 gauge wire, and it's always a good idea to work this wire through your fingers a few times before you start wire wrapping. Makes it easier to wrap. Our pendant has a side drilled hole near the top, and I want to determine which side I want to be the front and the back, and I want this to be my front. So I'm going to slide approximately 4 inches or so of wire through the hole, bring it back together, the tails back together on the top, and then I'm going to twist it a couple of times. The next step is going to be to form a loop at the top. To do that, I'm going to use my round nose pliers. I don't need the loop to be very large because it's just going to string on regular beading wire. So I'm going to make a little loop. I'm going to bring the other tail back down. Now that I've wrapped that down to the bottom, I'm going to trim off my short tail and get rid of that. Now the goal is to wrap this pendant so we'll have a wire at the bottom to hang the tassel we're going to make that will hang off the bottom of the pendant. So the first step is to bring that wire down the back and back up, and then kind of off to the side perhaps, and then I'm just going to play with it. You have to play with it a little bit to determine where the wire catches the side and what looks good to you. So I'm just going to play with it a little bit here, and you want it nice and snug against the sides. And I'm doing just kind of an abstract crisscross. Then I'm bringing it back up near the top, and I'm going to bring it back around. And at this point, I'm going to bring it through to anchor it a little bit. Bring it through that first loop that went through the hole. You want to try to make sure it doesn't bend too much. So that looks good. My tassel will hang pretty much in the middle right here, wrapping it back around. And my last step is to just wrap this off so it looks nice underneath the loop. And I want this to wrap to be kind of chunky here, so I'm going to play with it a little bit. There, I think I'm happy with that. And I'm going to trim the tail. And I'm going to take my needle nose pliers, and I don't want any sharp edges that'll scratch the neck. So I want to make sure that I'm pinching that wire where I trim the tail off in so it's nice and smooth, which I've done. Okay, we've got that done. The next step is to make our tassel. And I chose, we have a embroidery floss assortment that has many, many colors. But because of the color of the beads I'm working with, I was drawn to this. So the first step is to remove the paper wrap carefully from the skein. The next step is to open the skein up in the middle, trying to preserve the circle that it was wrapped around, like so. There, I'm pretty happy with that. So we'll open up that circle. And the next step is, excuse me, I put my bindings off to the side, to take a jump ring and open the jump ring. I'm using a 6mm open jump ring. And I want that jump ring to go around all those pieces of floss. This can be a little tricky, but not that difficult. Just want to make sure that you don't forget any of those strands. You want to double check that you've picked them all up in your jump ring. And close that jump ring around all those strands. Now that we have the jump ring holding the floss together on one side of the circle, I cut an 8-inch length of 24 gauge wire, and I'm working it through my fingers again. And at this point, I'm going to pinch the floss together under the jump ring, and I'm going to wrap all the floss together underneath that jump ring. I want to get it started off nice and even. And then I'm going to wrap that loop up towards the jump ring. To make a nice even wire wrap. And I'm going to use my needle nose pliers to make sure I pinch the wire ends in so there's no sharp edges. I can also use it to pull those wires together a little bit so the wrap is nice and even. And I'll finish wrapping off the other tail. Next step is to cut the tassel. So we're going to find the middle again. Cut down through. And then you just kind of eyeball what length you'd like your tassel to be. We can trim it more later after we attach it to the pendant. Now that I have the tassel pretty much finished. I'm going to use another jump ring, open it, slide it through the jump ring on top of the tassel, and slide it through the wire on the bottom of the pendant. Now we have that attached. Now to string the necklace, I have cut a 44-inch length of gold beading wire. So I have my beading wire, and then I went ahead and I selected out beads that matched as much as possible. These are the round beads. You'll find there's 2 different sizes on each strand. Oh, I think these are around 10 millimeter, and these are probably around 8 millimeter. So I have separated those. And then on the other strands of beads, there's these gemstone beads, and then there's green glass beads and brown glass beads. And I've picked through them all, and I tried to match them up pretty much by color, but mostly also by size, so they're as similar as possible so that the necklace will hang evenly on side to side. So now that I have my gemstone beads and my glass beads separated out, I need 14 green beads, and I tried to match them up 2 similar sizes of each shape and size, and I needed 10 brown glass beads, so I did the same thing there. Doesn't really matter what shape and size, just as long as you have 2. So I have those all set, I have these all set, and I have some gold beads all set. Now we can start stringing. Okay, the first step will be to string the pendant onto the middle of our beading wire. Then we're going to start beading on side to side, each side of the pendant, so the necklace is symmetrical. Having sorted out our beads ahead of time is really going to help. So the first step will be 3 large gold rounds on each side. Matching green glass beads on each side. A large yellow pine round bead on each side. Then another gold on each side. Next, we'll string on matching brown glass beads on each side. And topaz gemstones that match the best you can in terms of size, color, and shape. They won't be perfect. And another gold bead. And we're just going to keep repeating that pattern all the way up each side of the necklace. Okay, now that I have most of my beads strung symmetrically on each side, the last step is to string 3 more gold rounds on each side for the top back sides of the necklace. Now that I'm done stringing on the beads, it's time to finish off the back of our necklace. To do that, one little hint, I'm right-handed, so I like my lobster clasp to be in my right hand. Open and close it. So I'm going to attach my lobster clasp on the back right side of my necklace. The lobster clasp I'm using today already has a jump ring on it. So to attach to that lobster clasp, we slide on a crimp tube, bring it through the jump ring on the lobster clasp, back through the crimp tube, and we'll snug that up nice and close to the jump ring. And I'll use crimping pliers to close the crimp nice and securely. This necklace is going to be a little bit heavy, so we don't want our clasp to fall off. So I'm going to trim the tail on that side. And lastly, we're going to attach, whoops, first of all, I'm going to work my necklace, my beads down. And I don't want them to be so tight when I put my last crimp on that the beads don't hang nice and smooth. So we want to keep that in mind. Slide the crimp bead on. Bring the wire through our jump ring. Back through our crimp tube. And this is where we want to be careful not to close the crimp too tight or too loose on that wire. So I'm going to work it down, and then I'm going to test it before I close that crimp. And then securely close that crimp tube. And trim our tail on our necklace. It's complete. Actually, don't really need the lobster clasp on the back. In this case, it's long enough I could slide it right over my head. But if you prefer yours shorter, you'll want that lobster clasp on the back. So, what do you think? If you make your own tassel pendant necklace, we'd love to see it. You can share it with us on Instagram at #CreateWithCousin. Thanks for joining us. See you next time. Bye.